I held my water glass so tightly that my knuckles turned white, but I refused to let my mother see how badly her words cut me. "Claire, you'll never be as good as your sister," she said, her voice carrying across the dining room like it was nothing more than a fact. The chandelier above us reflected little prisms of light across the tablecloth, and the whole room went quiet. That silence wasn't comforting. It was heavy, painful. We were gathered for a family dinner, celebrating my sister Olivia's big promotion. She had just been made senior manager at her company, and my parents wanted to honor her with this evening. I'd rushed straight there after a 10-hour workday. Barely enough time to swap my wrinkled blouse for a clean one. "Mom," Olivia started softly, but she stopped when my mother raised her hand, the way she always did to shut people down. "It's just reality, dear," Mom said firmly. "Your sister chose stability over ambition. Nothing wrong with that, but we all know Olivia's path will take her higher." My dad cleared his throat, eyes fixed on the half-eaten salmon on his plate. "Your mother's right, Claire. Olivia's on track for vice president before she's 30, but you and her, well, you've taken different paths." I looked over at Olivia sitting there in her perfect crimson dress, not a strand of her hair out of place, even after a long day at the office. Then my eyes shifted to my mother, wearing the pearl necklace I'd bought her last Christmas. She had brushed it off back then, saying it wasn't really her style, but she had worn it proudly to every one of Olivia's celebrations since. Something inside me snapped. 2 years of swallowing my feelings boiled over. I reached into my purse, pulled out the mortgage statement I had carried for days, waiting for the right moment. But there never was a right moment for something like this. "I've been paying your bills for 2 years, I said, placing the paper right in the middle of the table, "including this house." My mom's eyes widened just for a second before she composed herself again. She waved her hand like it was no big deal, the same way she always brushed things aside. "That's what family does, Claire. Olivia needs to focus on her career." My stomach twisted. I thought back to Olivia's college graduation 6 years ago. My parents had surprised her with the keys to a brand new red Mazda, complete with a giant bow on the hood. Later that day, they handed me a small gift bag. Inside was just a coffee mug with my college logo on it. When my expression betrayed me, Mom had smiled and said, "You're already established, sweetheart. Your sister needs more help." That memory still stung. And then there was that first phone call 2 years ago. My dad, sounding unsure for the first time in my life, asking for help with just one mortgage payment. "It's only temporary," they had said, "just until things stabilize." I tapped the corner of the paper on the table. 2 years of payments isn't temporary help anymore. Mom's eyes hardened. "Why are you being selfish? Family supports one another." I pulled out more papers from my bag: receipts, canceled, checks, bank statements. I had kept everything, maybe because a part of me always knew this day would come. "I've supported plenty," I said, my voice shaking but growing steadier. "But I'm not your ATM." Dad frowned. "Your sister's. At a critical stage in her career." "And I'm at a critical stage in my patience," I shot back, surprising myself with the firmness of my tone. Olivia looked confused, her gaze bouncing between us. "What's going on?" she asked, but no one answered her. My mom just glared at me. My dad stared at the ceiling, and I stood there, finally seeing my family for who they really were. To them, my worth wasn't in love or shared memories. It was in how much money I could provide while staying out of the spotlight. "I'm taking a break from family dinners," I said, grabbing my purse and the stack of papers. Mom's single quotes' face hardened even more. "You'll regret this, Claire. Family is all we have in this world." I paused in the doorway, my chest tight but strangely lighter. "Then I guess I have nothing," I said, before walking out. A week passed after that dinner. My parents didn't call me once. Olivia texted a couple of times, but that was it. Then, one Thursday afternoon, Mom called not to apologize. not to ask how I was, but to ask if I could help her organize her tax documents. Since you're so good with numbers, she added, a backhanded compliment that both acknowledged and dismissed me in one breath. I didn't expect to find anything unusual, but as I sorted through the messy pile of papers on her desk, my eyes froze on something familiar. My own name, a student loan statement. Not mine, but Olivia's, and the payment of $19,400 had been made using my account number. My stomach twisted. My hands shook as I flipped through more documents. Car payments, credit card bills. Every page confirmed the truth. It hadn't been a one-time emergency. This was deliberate, systematic. Expected, I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Mom in the doorway. She was wearing that pearl necklace again. Did you find the mortgage forms? She asked. Then her eyes fell on the papers in my hands. For a brief moment, I saw its annoyance, not guilt, just irritation at being caught. What is this? I demanded. My voice strange and distant. Dad appeared behind her, adjusting his reading glasses. Olivia lingered in the hallway, scrolling through her phone, barely paying attention. Don't make a scene, Claire, Mom said, stepping into the room. Dad followed her, looming behind like always. I held up the paper. You used my money to pay Olivia's student loans. $19,400. From me. Mom waved her hand, calm as ever. You were helping the family. Her loans were urgent, and the car payments too. I flipped through another page. $3,600 last year. For her Mazda, transportation. Is essential for her position, Dad explained like it was obvious. I fanned out more receipts. $9,200 on credit cards. Restaurants, designer clothes. Professional appearance matters in marketing, Mom replied without missing a beat. I looked at Olivia. She finally put her phone away and shrugged. I didn't ask for any of this. Mom said you were happy to help. The walls felt like they were closing in. I had thought I was helping them through a hard time, but the truth was, clear I had been funding Olivia's lifestyle while neglecting my own future. You need to understand, Dad said, his voice firm. Olivia needs freedom to build her career. You're stable, reliable, the workhorse, the invisible daughter who made everything possible for the shining star. I pushed back from the desk. My own student loans aren't even paid off yet. I've been draining my savings to cover yours. That's different, Mom said quickly. Your career doesn't require the same kind of image. The unspoken insult hung in the air. Software engineer versus marketing manager. Background versus spotlight. Do you have any idea what this is doing to me? I asked, my voice stronger now. If I keep doing this, I'll never have anything for myself. Mom blinked, like she couldn't even understand what I was saying. Family supports family, Claire. And Olivia's wedding is coming up, she added, her eyes lighting up. Of course, you'll help with that too. She deserves the perfect day. Her casual assumption knocked the wind out of me. I grabbed the ledger from the desk and flipped to the last page where I had tracked everything. The total glared back at me in bold ink. $61,000. 2 years of mortgage payments, student loans, car payments, credit cards. $61,000 gone, while they treated me like the lesser daughter. I closed the book with shaking hands. All this time, I hadn't just been enabling their favoritism, I had been paying for it. The afternoon I left Mom's office, my head was spinning. $61,000. 2 years. Every payment I had made. My own student loans ignored. Dental work postponed. Small savings drained all to support a family that saw me as invisible. I drove home slowly, clutching the ledger, my knuckles white, my heart heavier than ever. The time I walked into my apartment, the silence was comforting. No lectures, no guilt trips, no expectations. Just the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the faint smell of leftover coffee. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down at the small kitchen table. The ledger opened in front of me, page after page of receipts, bank transfers, and statements stared back at me. The numbers weren't just figures, they were proof. Proof of years of manipulation, of being taken advantage of. I called Diane, my closest friend and colleague, who had always been my sounding board. We met later that afternoon at our usual cafe, the smell of espresso filling the air. She glanced at the ledger and her eyes widened. "This isn't normal family support," she said, closing the book slowly and handing it back. "Claire, this is exploitation." The word hit me like a punch. Exploitation. Not help. Not family duty. A deliberate, ongoing pattern of using me because they knew I would comply. For days after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I replayed every conversation, every dinner, every small comment that had made me feel inadequate next to Olivia. I thought about my parents' faces when I had confronted them. The way they waved their hands, dismissed my concerns, and then acted as if everything was normal. My trust in them had been broken, and for the first time in years, I saw them clearly. At work, I found myself distracted. During meetings, I calculated in my head how much money I had spent on their expenses. How long I'd have to work just to catch up on my own life. My student loans were still hanging over me, threatening my financial stability, and every time I thought about the money I had given them, my chest tightened. I started keeping a journal. Every call from Mom, every subtle message from Olivia, every request for money, it all went into that leather-bound book. The details of their manipulation, the casual references to Olivia's success, the guilt trips, and the celebrations I had funded while remaining invisible. Each entry felt like a small victory, a piece of clarity in the fog of family control. One Tuesday evening, as I was leaving work, a familiar voice called my name, "Claire." I turned to see Uncle Frank standing by the elevator. His face, usually cheerful, was creased with concern. "Uncle Frank, what are you doing here?" I asked, surprised. "I've been looking for you," he said gently. "You've missed the last 3 family gatherings. Not like you." I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that I had spent 2 years paying for their lifestyle, while being told I was selfish for wanting stability for myself? "I always thought you were the backbone of this family," he said. "Now I'm starting to wonder if they've been taking advantage of that strength." His words hit me hard. I blinked back tears, grateful for someone outside of my parents and sister acknowledging what I had gone through. A few days later, I found myself back in my parents' kitchen. Olivia sat at the counter, flipping through bridal magazines, her excitement palpable as she discussed venues and colors. Mom was circling details in red pen, her focus intense. "The country club deposit is due next week," Mom said without looking up. "Olivia deserves the perfect celebration. You can cover the venue deposit next week." Not a question, a statement, a command. Something inside me snapped. "I'm not paying another cent," I said calmly, my voice firm. The room froze. Olivia's head jerked up, eyes wide. Mom's pen hovered midair. "Don't be ridiculous," she said finally, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "I'm serious," I said, feeling a strange power in my voice. "I've paid the mortgage, student loans, car payments, credit cards. I'm done." Her mouth opened, searching for words, but I could see the familiar guilt trip tactics failing for the first time. I had finally recognized the pattern, the manipulation, and the expectation that I should finance my own mistreatment. "You can't just," Mom began. "I can," I interrupted, and for the first time in years, I felt in control. And I am. Later, Diane spread spreadsheets across her dining table, calculator in hand, helping me plan what I could do for my own future. "Without supporting them," she said, circling a number, "you could pay off your student loans in 3 years instead of 15. I stared at the figure, almost disbelieving. A future I hadn't dared to imagine. For the first time in years, I could breathe a little easier, knowing that I wasn't trapped financially anymore. Uncle Frank called that evening. "I spoke with your mother," he said. "She's not happy, I know. But sometimes family needs to learn hard lessons. I'm proud of you for setting boundaries." The next day, I began searching for job opportunities outside of Austin. Seattle caught my eye. A fresh start, a new city, and a higher salary. 3,000 miles away. I allowed myself to imagine a life built around my needs, not my family's. Demands that at the bank, I requested printouts of every transaction for the last 2 years. Hours later, I organized them chronologically, highlighting every payment I had made, tucked among Dad's financial documents. I found a surprise, an account I had never known about, with a balance that completely contradicted every claim of hardship he had made. They had been hiding money while I drained my savings to support. The phone rang, and it was Mom. "We're having an emergency family responsibility meeting tomorrow," she announced without greeting. "The mortgage payment didn't arrive. Be here at 6. I stayed calm. "I told you I'm done paying," I said, and for the first time, I felt no fear. The next evening, I arrived at the meeting 15 minutes early, parking my car a few houses down. The black binder on the passenger seat weighed more than I expected. Inside, every document, every payment, every transfer neatly organized by category and date. Uncle Frank's advice echoed in my mind. Don't let them control the narrative. As I entered, the familiar smell of lemon furniture polish hit me. Mom and Dad sat at opposite ends of the dining table, their expressions regal, like they were about to deliver judgment. Olivia sat uncomfortably between them, phone in hand. "You're early," Mom said, surprised for a second before composing herself. I placed the binder in the center of the table. The soft thud drew attention immediately. "Time. For what, exactly?" Dad asked, suspicion in his voice. I opened the binder to the first tab, mortgage. "Let's go through everything I've paid over the past 2 years, I said, my tone businesslike, controlled. Mortgage. 24 payments at $1,200 each. That's $28,800. Mom's eyebrows shot up. "That can't be right. Student loans. Next. Olivia's, not mine. $19,400. Dad's face paled. Car payments. $3,600. Credit cards. $9,200. Dining, clothing, work-related expenses." The total, highlighted in yellow, glared back at them. $61,000. Sierra Olivia's usual confidence vanished. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the table. "That's more than I make in 3 months, she whispered. Mom's single quotes, lips pressed into a thin line. "You're exaggerating. Half those payments were gifts. You offered to help." I pulled out a folder containing copies of every check, every transfer. "Would you like to go through them one by one?" I asked. Dad muttered something, avoiding my gaze. Olivia flipped through the folder, shock spreading across her face. "I had no idea," she said softly. "Mom said you wanted to help. Extra money," I said, laughing a little bitterly. "There was never extra money. I'm still paying my own student loans. I've put off dental work. There was no extra money. Ever." For the first time, the room felt small. The walls seemed to shrink as the truth settled in. 2 years of financial support had been turned into exploitation, and for the first time, I could see it all. The next week, I sat at my apartment, going over the binder again. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, respect, and my future. I wasn't going to let my parents or Olivia manipulate me anymore. I wasn't going to let them treat me like the invisible daughter who existed only to pay for someone else's life. I called Diane to tell her about the family meeting I planned. "Uncle Frank is going to join me," I said, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and strength. "I need someone on my side, someone who can see clearly what's happening." "That's smart," Diane said. You can't fight them alone. You need witnesses and support. When Tuesday evening arrived, I parked a few houses down from Mom and Dad's colonial-style home. I carried the black binder, heavy with years of proof, every page carefully organized. Walking to the door, I took a deep breath. I was nervous. Sure, but there was a power in knowledge. They could no longer lie or manipulate me. The familiar lemon scent hit me as I stepped inside. Mom and Dad were seated at the dining room table, Olivia perched between them, looking anxious and a little guilty. I placed the binder in the center of the table with a soft thud that made them all look up. You're early, Mom said, her voice tight. She tried to mask surprise with a smirk, but I saw through it. I wanted to make sure we had enough time, I said calmly. Time to go through the payments I've made over the past 2 years. Dad's brow furrowed. Why? Are we doing this? I opened the binder to the first tab. Let's start with the mortgage. 24 payments at $1,200 each. $28,800. Mom's eyes widened. That can't be right. Next, I flipped to the student loans. Olivia's loans, not mine. $19,400. Dad's face went pale. He fidgeted with his glasses, fingers drumming. On the table, car payments, $3,600. Credit cards, $9,200. Dining, clothes, work trips, everything logged and totaled. The grand total glared at them in bold. $61,000. Olivia's phone slipped from her hand. Her usual confidence vanished as she looked at me, stunned. That's more than I make in 3 months, she whispered. Mom's single quotes, his face hardened. You're exaggerating. Half those payments were gifts. You offered to help. I pulled out a folder with copies of every check, every transfer. Would you like to go through them one by one? I asked, my voice controlled. Steady, Dad muttered, avoiding my gaze. Olivia flipped through the folder, shock spreading across her face. I had no idea, she said softly. Mom said you wanted to help. I laughed a little, bitterly. Extra money. There was never extra money. I'd been paying my own student loans, delaying dental work. There was no extra money, ever. For the first time, the weight I had carried for years began to lift. I realized I wasn't just exposing them, I was freeing myself. The room was silent for a moment. Mom and Dad's usual defenses faltered under the sheer evidence. Olivia looked at me with tears forming. I didn't know, she whispered again. I never asked for this. You never had to, I said gently, because I was never given a choice. The next morning, I opened my laptop and finalized plans for my move. I had accepted a position as a software architect in Seattle. A fresh start, a higher salary, a life built around me. The thought made my chest light for the first time in years. I called Diane to share the news. Seattle, she said, smiling through the phone. That's amazing. You're finally putting yourself first. Yes, I said, and for once, I felt no guilt, just possibility. The day before my move, I gathered all my personal documents, receipts, and statements. I double-checked the ledger, making sure everything was in order. Every dollar accounted for, every page telling the truth of what had happened. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the years lost to manipulation, but relief that I could finally take control of my life. When I arrived at my parents' house one last time, I placed the ledger and folder on the dining table. Olivia was there, staring at the documents, finally seeing the truth for herself. I never realized how much you did for me, she said softly. I thought Mom and Dad were helping, but I see now, it was you. Yes, I said. For too long, I carried this weight so that everyone else could shine. Mom tried to speak, but I stopped her gently. Not today. You've had years. To see this today, I'm setting boundaries. I'm leaving for Seattle next week. I'll be financially independent. I won't pay for your lifestyle anymore. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Dad looked down at the table. Olivia reached out and took my hand. "Thank you for showing me," she said, tears in her eyes. "I promise to be more careful. With money now, I want to be responsible too." I nodded, feeling a knot of resentment and obligation loosen in my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prop up their lives at the cost of my own. 2 months later, Seattle mornings greeted me with sunlight streaming through my apartment windows. My student loan balance was decreasing, month by month, and I finally felt in control. No mortgage payments to my parents. No credit card bailouts for Olivia. Just me, making choices for me. Diane called one evening for a video chat. "Look at you," she said, smiling. "You're thriving. You look different." "Happier I am," I said, straightening my shoulders. "I closed 2 major projects this quarter. My client satisfaction scores are the highest in the company, and no one is taking credit for my work. For the first time, it feels like success is really mine." Diane grinned. "And what about your hiking group? Are you still going to Mount Rainier?" "I am," I said, laughing. "And I've started seeing someone casually. No pressure. Just a possibility." The next week, Uncle Frank visited Seattle. Diana and I took him around the city, showing him the apartment, our favorite cafes, and the trails I planned to hike. Over dinner, he raised his glass. "To building the family you choose, not just the one you were born into," he said, and I felt the truth in those words settle in my bones. Then came an unexpected email from Olivia. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I wanted to read her words. But curiosity won. "I took over Mom and Dad's mortgage payment last month," she wrote. "They weren't happy. Dad suggested I ask you to help, but I told him I'm established now. It's harder than I expected, but I understand the lesson. I think I finally get what you've been trying to show me." Reading her words, I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had finally understood responsibility, independence, and boundaries. "Mom and Dad wanted to visit me," she continued, "but I reminded them it was my choice. For now, I wasn't ready to rebuild that relationship." I closed the laptop, leaning back in my chair. Seattle had given me more than a new job. It gave me freedom, clarity, and a chance to finally live for myself. I was still close to Olivia, my chosen family, Diane, and Uncle Frank. People who respected my boundaries and supported my dreams. The rest, that was up to them to change, if they ever chose to. For the first time, I felt the future wasn't just something I survived. It was something I controlled, and that control felt incredible.